Welcome to the Terraform and Azure community call. This is the October edition. If it's your first time here, we usually start out with me or anybody else from the product group just sharing some updates, and then we kind of transition the agenda over to you talking about whatever's top of mind for yourself. For this instance, I'm not going to repeat all the stuff that I talked about at HashiConf. There are recordings and sessions aplenty for you to do that. But I do want to share some updates on some future thinking or feedback that we're looking at. I have something for you all today. It is not released. It is not ready. Please don't go and try to look for it because you're not going to be able to use it. But we have everyone's favorite, an MCP server. So what I would like to do with everyone is try running this today and just have an open dialogue with all of you on what you would like to do with it. And let's just see how it goes, right? So this is how you would configure it in its current form, subject to change. But while this is in progress, I want to kind of talk with you all about some of the scenarios that we're trying to support here. The number one scenario that's top of mind for me is the export scenario. So a lot of you have seen or played with the export, and what I wanted to try, and I want to see how feasible it is see how much, because right now most people know export is like 70 to 80%, right? I want to see if we can get to like 90 or 95% with an MCP server with the ability to clean things up. So I'm going to type in here, and is this, if the text is too small, by the way, someone please holler. Export my existing resource group, Cascade Cloud RG. And as
Hey,
all agents
Stephen,
will.
sorry
Yep.
to interrupt you. Can you put your font size a little bit bigger? I'm old, man, so I can't see.
Oh no, don't worry about it.
Thanks, man.
That that should be better. Or do you want another
Yep, it's good. It's good.
Okay. So, all right. While it's running, you can see there's an export Azure Resource Group command. So we've integrated the MCP server to it will support export in some way, shape, or form. We're going to run that. It creates this new folder that will then store all of the Terraform files. And in and of itself, that functionality is going to work the exact same way as the VS Code extension, as the export in the Azure portal, and all the other ways that you currently call that API. So this shouldn't be too different. The thing that is different in my head, or where I am a little bit more intrigued by, is how can we then take that code, which, if any of you have tried before, tends to be a little bit, for lack of a better word, messy, and essentially convert it into something that looks a bit more compliant. So there are things that we're working on in that process. Can we take in your own context, like your coding standards or your naming conventions, or heck, even your policies? We don't know, to be honest, if all of those are feasible, but we're looking into it. And can we clean up the code just to actually have implicit dependencies? Because if there's one thing AI is good at, it's good at pattern recognition. And if we can tell it, hey, here's the resource group name, replace all of these with resource group name, and then from there, go ahead and remove the explicit dependencies, then that would be a wonderful world that we live in. This has been running for a while, and it never did that before today. So as all demos go, it is falling apart on me live. But looks like it's in the middle of exporting. So while this is going, does that scenario, what are people's thoughts on it? Are people finding value or potential benefit to that, or does that sound like a bunch of baloney that probably won't be that useful for them?
I definitely find being able to export resources as a valid thing, the variety of the resources is, I think, going to be the most important part. So if it's limited to the explicit one, so in this case, it looks like it's running an export Azure Resource Group tool, then like if I want to export an application gateway, is it going to be able to help me there?
It's a good question. It should be able to do that. This is just trying to be smart because it actually has the export resource group, and then you can also point at a resource. I don't know if the logic is actually smart enough to know a specific resource group. Here, let's try it this way. Let me just say, now just export my Cosmos DB Postgres cluster.
What I didn't notice the first time is that it actually exported everything in the resource group and not just like the resource group instance itself. I missed that the
Correct.
first time.
No, you're good. So you can totally do one resource, I think. I can run that here in a second. And at the same time, you can also just export everything in the resource group. But this is very this is stuff that you've seen before. Oh yeah, so here's what happens. Export Azure resource, and then it'll give you the whole resource ID. It'll give you an output folder name and all of that. So I'm gonna skip that since we already have it in here. Stop it. I don't want you to keep going. All right. So what then happens is I'm looking at this code and I'm like, okay, I don't think this is ready for anybody's eyes. Can I have you clean up the code in Cascade Cloud RG export? And then I'm going to run this. This is where I think we're going to see what we can do. So this is actually right now we're calling it a code cleanup, but the reason we're calling it that is also because I think it's more generic than that. If you happen to have code that you think might need some cleanup, we are potentially surfacing this as a way of helping you towards that direction. Obviously, back up your files if you are worried about recovery or anything like that, and use at your own discretion. But it is going to make a list of to-dos, and you can see what it's trying to do. So we'll create a variables.tf, a locals, rename resources with a naming convention other than res-0 and res-1. And then the other thing is we included Terraform state. So it's going to run Terraform state move to move everything to the new names because it'll think everything needs to be destroyed and recreated if you change the name of the Terraform resource. Create an outputs.tf, improve resource configuration, validate test changes. And again, I'll say this every like 10 minutes that I'm on this window. This is in progress. It is not available today. And we are simply showing it to you because you are a wonderful community and we want your feedback and we want to show you things before they're fully out there so that you can tell us what you would like to see added to it. So yeah, it's going through and doing all that. Created a variables.tf. We can click here and see what it did. There's a location, resource group name, environment, project name, so on and so forth. Obviously, this is going to be needing your feedback and your own consideration in terms of what you think makes sense and doesn't make sense. They variabilize quite literally well, maybe not everything, but it feels like pretty much anything that could be variabilized. And the one thing that I have found is in the current form of the export, it likes to just make a locals.tf, but then just assign a bunch of variables, which is not the final form that I'm looking for. But you get the idea and concept of what we can essentially have here. We have a locals, we have a variables.tf, main.tf with the actual changes all through, and this all looks like a proper Terraform configuration, more or less, and that's the goal that you would hope for, in a sense. So you can see here when it does a state move, it's just going to literally run Terraform state move over and over. But yeah, now that that's kind of wrapped up, you can see the code that earlier looked like a bunch of hard-coded strings and a bunch of weirdness just got replaced with this stuff. It decided that it wanted to manually create timeouts every single instance. Again, this is like a test more than anything, but it's pretty. It looks prettier than what we used to have. That's for sure. Visual, your hands up.
Yeah. My perspective, I honestly don't use Terraform Export a lot.
Mhm.
Whenever I need it, I do it from the portal, and to be honest, the experience is not very good. Most of the times it breaks, but probably because of the complexity of the resources that you have. But with that said, I like the idea. I like the direction you're taking. I love that I don't need to leave my IDE. So being able to do it from Visual Studio Code and not leaving Visual Studio Code to go to a portal to do something and then back to code.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think this can be valuable. For instance, for me, it can be valuable in scenarios. Well, we usually don't do ClickOps, right? So we don't do anything on a portal. So we usually
Yeah.
you don't need to export, or you shouldn't, but sometimes you do, right? Or sometimes there's this freaking setting that you want to set up on Terraform and you're hitting your head against a wall. How do I get my parameters right? And then you just say, okay, let me try to do a mock on a staging environment on the portal of what I want, and then try to export to see why am I failing? What is the format of that specific property that I need to set up? So yeah, I think for that, this is valuable. Also, for training, people learning how to do Terraform, it's
Yeah.
easier for a trainee or a junior just to click up some things and then export and look at the code and see how it was built behind. So yeah,
Totally. And honestly, Pedro, what you're talking about is great. If you don't have random infrastructure that is sitting out there in a brownfield environment that like if you touch that thing, the whole prod environment's gonna go down. The number of platform guys I've talked to who are just like, we have this legacy code that was written in ARM templates back in '09 and I can't do anything about it. That's the stuff that they want to bring to Terraform, and it's a very delicate and sensitive process, right? But the fact that we
yeah,
don't
good
have that
point.
nowadays is
Good
is
point.
usually
I
a good
also have
thing.
that. I also have that. I also have that.
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
tell you I
So
have some service fabric clusters which are an ARM template and nobody wants to touch that.
yeah, and the question is, what can we do to actually bring that to 2025? Is it possible? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I would like to believe that there's a possibility that we could, and that's what we're trying to swing at bat here with. With regards to learning, I'm 100% with you. I think I've heard over and over before, yeah, I'm starting out in the portal to learn how something goes, and then I'm like clicking through all these boxes to figure out what the heck it means in Terraform, and then I'm going over to Terraform and I'm trying to write it, and then I miss this property, and then I have to mess around with that, and eventually you get your way there. But it would be great if the barriers there were just a little bit lower. So we don't necessarily think that we're fully there yet in terms of using export almost in like an educational sense, but we'd like to see what we could get done in that direction. Dominique?
I, in the way that been experiencing, like using the Terraform and stuff, one of the principles that I found to be helpful is reducing indirection and decoupling things as much as possible is kind of my go-to. So having the ability to introduce variables everywhere is like great for the people who are doing it that way. But what I would be interested in is the opposite. So if we have all this code that's like using a variable for the name on every resource, and then the variable has a default value, and or the variable's coming from a .tfrs file, is kind of doing the opposite and inlining everything so that when I look at this and I see, okay, there's an Azure subnet, I don't have to go through 6 hops to find what the name is. And that gets super
Yeah,
compounded when you're in the Azure DevOps pipeline, and the pipeline's using YAML templates, and the YAML templates are executing bash to generate variables and stuff. It's like, oh my goodness, I have 21 hops to find out what the name of this resource group is going to be. And the other one is in the theme of decoupling, is kind of separating into different folders. So if I have a key vault that I want to deploy, then one folder is going to deploy that key vault, and then one folder is going to deploy the resource group, and then the second folder is going to have a data block to look up that resource group, and then the key vault is going to have the resource group name equals data.azurem-resource-group.main.name. So instead of it being one pipeline that's doing 600 things, you have, I guess 600 pipelines is not that great either, but it's not going to take 20 minutes to deploy because you can just deploy the one that you want. So being able to reduce the indirection and say collapse this into the pieces that make sense, and also break it out into the pieces that make sense. So if I have a application gateway that's connecting certain things, then the deployment of the gateway is kind of in some sense a little independent from the things that are running. So if it's an app service, then the gateway code can use a data block to look up the IP or whatever of the app service and add the backend that way. And then using the expressions, so instead of a string literal on what the resource group name should be, having it be equal to the value on the data block is what I prefer.
Totally. And it sounds like you're trying to deal with that sprawl issue and also trying to get it all neatly sliced up, refactoring things into what makes sense, right? Does the application gateway really need to sit in the middle of all the networking stuff, or can it stand up on its own? That's a real scenario here as well that I think we can definitely think about. Sai?
Hi, I like how it's exporting everything. Is it getting the resources exported from the resource group in real time? Like just how
Yes.
it's just showing. Can it also do the same thing on subscription scope?
I don't actually remember if we, hold on, let me see.
Okay.
Can you export using Azure Resource Graph filtering and a subscription step?
Yeah, because I have this question. Currently, we are using Terraform to provision landing zones for our end users, and kind of interested in seeing Terraform exporting everything
Yep.
on subscription scope, if possible.
Yeah. We will be supporting it when it comes out again. It's been
Okay.
10 minutes approximately, so I'll just say it's still not released. We're in feedback phase with
Mhm.
all of you. But if you're familiar with Azure Resource Graph, you just need to pass in your individual query information. Obviously, this should be smart enough that it'll just read your chat prompt and then it will create the query for you. You just need to validate that it looks okay and then you let it run.
Okay.
So that should be working.
Okay. I'm still trying to understand this. Is this integrated to Copilot or it's native to Terraform? Like,
This is the Terraform MCP server that we're working on. It's
oh,
not
okay.
released yet.
Okay.
It's not ready yet, but we want to show it to you early
Mhm.
rather than later so we can get that feedback.
Okay. Cool. Nice. Uh, just want to know when it's going to be generally available. Any estimated time to try this out?
Well, generally available or public preview are two different things. So do you
Mm,
mean that
Public
it's
preview should also work. Just to
okay?
try it out myself.
I don't have an ETA for you yet.
Mhm.
But just know that we're working on it actively and it is top of mind for us.
Okay. Cool.
David.
In relation to, I think it was Dominic's questions and discussions earlier on variables and where do you place things and splitting them up. I'm just curious if anyone else has done this. We have several now large landing zone projects with multiple workloads, environments, and such that we've adapted to using Terragrunt and units in particular to handle a lot of that, as well as the dynamic variabilizing of things or the inputs for those variables. Anybody else taking advantage of Terragrunt for that yet?
I think CDS or ESDC from the Canadian government might be using it. They have some public GitHub repos.
Yeah, we found it incredibly useful. We haven't quite nailed it down on the platform landing zone pieces, but particularly what you were talking about for app gateways and dividing out that code but centralizing it still, it's been hugely beneficial. Of course, we also combine it with remote state as well to piece everything together so we can get it all down. As right now, we've got our workloads divided out into independent states and runs, but we're working on consolidating it all using Terraform into a single pipeline.
I was able to find it. I put the link in the chat. It's the CDS notification-terraform Git repository.
Cool. I'll check that out. Thanks.
Hey, Stephen, this is Vamshi here.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think this is going to be useful. I don't know. Let me explain my scenario where there are some complicated resources in Azure, right? Like, for example, front door application gateway. Those are the two complicated that I would say because of the number of things that are involved in it, right? Routes, listeners, endpoints, rules, all of those things. And when you add multiple listeners, multiple routes, multiple certs, multiple listeners, all of those things, it's complicated. And we use modules. Basically, there are consumers in our company for Terraform. We are the people who create the module. And when we create the module, it gets muddier because of all these complexities. So there are some things we do it in the module, some things we do outside the module. For example, rewrite rules inside App Gateway. They're confusing as hell because rewrite rules are per use case, right? You want to redirect something and then you want to mask something. There are various use cases. So in order to write those things, we do it through Portal today, and it'll be great to export them to Terraform. That'll be a perfect use case for this.
100%. That's exactly what I was talking about in terms of when something's a pain in the butt to write, how the heck do you easily get that into Terraform, right? And reducing that toil.
Front door as an
nuance
example
is
we
front
just
door,
deployed
app gateway.
we deployed our
Totally.
first front door, and I backed out of Terraform for that because of the overhead involved in it.
Totally. Jack? You're on mute if you are talking. I'm gonna skip ahead for a second to Dominique.
So with the MCP server being available, some of the tools that I think would be helpful are related to PIM. So if I need to create a application registration or a security group in Entra, then I don't have standing access for that, but I do have PIM access. So if the MCP had tools to get my current role assignments and eligible role assignments and had the ability to activate those with a justification, then it could help with kind of the full deployment thing and say, hey, when we ran Terraform apply, we got an access denied error because you're missing the permission for application administrator. And then the Terraform MCP could run the tool to get all the eligible assignments and say, hey, here's the least privilege eligible assignment that would let this deploy go through. And then here's the suggested justification message. And it could actually hit the API request for you to actually do the activate would be nice.
Yeah, I think the whole space of role-based access control and Entra and all that, and flipping those switches in a like just-in-time secure sort of way, if it's intelligent enough to do that, it'd be awesome. The one thing that becomes dangerous there is what happens if I do a false positive there, where I'm like, oh, you want global admin access to everything under the universe, and then you blow something up. Obviously, I'm being over dramatic with that worst case scenario, but it seems like that's another interesting case that could continue to be top of mind for people. RBAC aware authoring is another thing that we would love to be able to do. If we can't give it to you automatically, maybe we can at least flag for you that these are the assignments that you need. But of course, in your case, if you're getting denied, as you said, then you might still be at ground zero.
Given that like the way I'm doing it right now is I have a command line tool that lets me activate PIM stuff from the CLI instead of going through the Azure portal, which is nice. But given that this is like a Terraform MCP, I know there is Terraform for the PIM stuff. I don't know if it's just creating eligible assignments or if it can also activate it. But if the process of it activating the PIM was it would create a new Terraform folder that would write the Terraform that would activate the PIM with the justification, then that could be an interesting way to do it that kind of still makes it very obvious to the user what's going on instead of just being a sneaky one line in the chat running a terminal command to activate it kind of thing.
Totally. Makes sense. I think that could be a good way of trying to go ahead and do it. All right. So I do want to pause before we keep going. I went ahead and the Terraform state thing didn't quite work perfectly, which is okay. That happens. It created a bunch of backups, but now I can go ahead and delete those. And our Terraform plan was not perfect. If you go ahead and look here, we have 3 to add and 3 to destroy. And the reason why is because it tags, which is a pretty funny reason. And then delegation here, but, oh, sorry, those are the ones that are still updated in place. It's because of some force replacement due to some of the renaming that's going on here. It looks like, and again, this is part of the process. The MCP server tried to get a little too liberal with some of the renaming that it did, and as a result, it just basically caused a bunch of we're going to replace things for no good reason to happen. So we'll rerun that now and see if it fixed itself. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it did. But yes, it is going to always try to avoid completely adding or destroying things. So it looks like it worked. That's great. And going ahead and looking at the changes it made, it just went ahead into the locals and renamed things with existing names to avoid recreation. So it is this delicate balance. I think we talked about variables and we talk about naming and all this. It definitely can easily over rename or over variabilize, and it can definitely under rename or under variabilize. So there's some sort of yes, I think Jeremy's correct. It's just the overeager junior engineer. And it will sometimes be like, oh yeah, look at all these changes I made. And you're like, well, if you apply that, it's going to destroy half the stuff. And it's like, oh, not great. Okay. But yep. So in the span of what, less than 30 minutes and with a few kinks in the road because of one of the commands failing, we got this code out of the resource group that we started with. Is it perfect? Definitely not. Are we still working on it? 100%. But it looks more like Terraform, and I think that's the thing that we are really trying to go for here. And in the process, hopefully reduce the pain that it'll take for a lot of people to get their existing stuff over into Terraform on Azure. Any questions about the export scenario? TFRs, I heard that in the chat a couple times. Yes, we definitely should do TFRs. And I think it needs some sort of logic between here's when you create a variables, here's when you create a locals, here's when you create a TFRs. And that's documented and well known, but right now it just doesn't have it. So I'll go back and make sure that it gets that change in. All right, Cohen?
Yeah, I was wondering, maybe you can give it a existing Terraform code and it will assess what's already your resource group and kind of make move blocks or tell you, well, this is how you would use your modules to produce the resources that you have in your resource group. That's the situation that we are in currently at our company.
So you would want it to basically understand an existing module structure and move all this to be representative or fitting under that module?
Yeah.
Got it. That's a good scenario that we should look into.
Yes, that
Wait.
would definitely help us too. For people who write modules, basically.
Yeah. Pedro?
Well, for me, what would be a lifesaver in many scenarios, real lifesaver, is I have my Terraform code and someone made some ClickOps. So look at the export, look at my code and say, hey, here's the diff. You have this piece of Terraform, which is not in your code and should be. Man, that would be an awesome lifesaver. Awesome lifesaver.
What is stopping your local Terraform from being able to catch that, Pedro? Like if you run a Terraform plan, is it going to see the change?
Yeah, but when you have a plan with thousands of lines of stuff, it's really hard to read huge plans, right? So there enters the AI, the machine to help us, right? If it could at least give me an idea, these are the drifts, this is the drift, this is the changes that I'm seeing from what you have and on code and what you have on the resources, that would be awesome, I think.
Got it.
I don't know how to put this into practice, okay? Just throwing it out, but I'm seeing some of my guys in my team going into projects that someone else was in the past, that someone else built the Terraform for, and then either someone at the customer side or within our team just went there to do some quick change that was not reflected on Terraform, and then everything breaks, right? So yeah.
Got it. Other scenarios? How about an MCP server in general for Terraform? Is there anything else that you would like to see? I think we've talked about refactoring. We've talked about refactoring around module structure. Anything else that you think is important? Pedro, I don't think you're the only one who hates ClickOps. And yet it is a necessary evil because we can't just start with making API calls or directly authoring Terraform for every resource that we've never encountered before. That's the unfortunate reality.
If in the case the resource that is not available in Terraform and we are using that in the resource group, will the NCP server
What it
export
will
it?
do is it will tell you that a resource was skipped. So it'll just mark it as, hey, we skipped it because we didn't have like a representative resource for it. And it'll just say so. You're gonna be on the hook to go find and figure out how to get that there. But in general, if it's in the Azure and provider, it's supported. And then if you export to AZ API, it will work if it again is supported through AZ API.
Okay.
X4 works for both providers. Other thoughts? All right, Andrew.
I know it's been a lot of push for like Azure verified modules lately. I don't know if you can compare the current config to a Microsoft recommended Azure verified config, I guess. Here's some security improvements you can do on your Key Vault, for example.
That makes a lot of sense, and I feel like that would be a logical first step towards a BYOM sort of model that Cohen talked about, where we start with AVM and we say, hey, how closely can we get this to an Azure verified module? And then you can eventually say, I want to hook up my own modules and basically get those to be what you're investigating or comparing patterns to. And I think that that would be a reasonable flow. Any other ideas or thoughts? This has been really helpful, and loving the conversation.
Maybe a code coverage where you point it at a resource group or a subscription or a scope, and it looks at the local code and sees how much of that remote stuff is actually covered by Terraform. So if you have an existing project, then it would be able to see what's missing in the config, if anything.
In terms of all the possible properties in
Yeah, so if you
coverage?
have a resource group, then you might have the resource group definition and like a key vault within it defined, but maybe your code is missing all the role assignments that are targeting that resource group and below.
Got it. So you would then just point out, here are the gaps in terms of what you need to get this going. What would the source of truth be again?
Azure would be the source of truth, and the local Terraform code would be what is being checked for coverage. So if you have a resource group and a role assignment, and in your local Terraform code you only have the resource block for the resource group, then I would consider that role assignment to be part of what should be part of the code. And if it's missing from the code, then kind of the audit would be able to omit the IDs of the stuff that needs to be imported.
Got it. Makes sense. Anything else before we hop off the MCP talk for a bit? Alrighty. Well, that took up a lot of time. Thanks for bearing with that, or maybe you didn't bear with it. Maybe you liked it. I hope you did. What else is on your top of mind? And great. Looks like people did like it. So. We can't talk about beer on a Terraform on Azure community call, Pedro. I'll get in trouble. My admins will come after me. I don't have any admins, but the invisible ones.
Will there be a Terraform on Azure meetup at Ignite?
I would love to have one, Jeremy, but none of us on the Terraform on Azure team got a pass to Ignite, to be honest. So, would love to see you, but we won't be there. Is the current status, unfortunately.
Jeez, do I have to make the Microsoft employee my +1 or what?
Yes. Just tell them that you're in a amicable relationship with Mark Gray and then fly him down. I will say no more. Terraform action examples. Sorry, Jeremy, I'll get to you in a second.
Nope, you're good.
Thinking about it. I haven't done anything yet, but there's no reason to not do actions for the AZ API provider or for Azure potentially. We have resource action today, so theoretically you should just roll it over to a Terraform action. But yeah, just one of those things that we're looking into. Nothing released yet. Jeremy, what was your thing you were going to talk about?
There was a hallway talk at HashiConf that one of the Microsoft folks did on AI landing zone. Does anyone happen to remember the repo that the public repo he was working from on that?
It's a good question. If you remember his name, I can probably just ping it. send it over.
I'll go find it. Yeah, I'll go find it. I'll ping it over to you.
Okay.
So somebody said, what if we talk about using Terraform to deploy, manage the IoT services infrastructure that monitor that works?
There is probably a brewery that depends upon Terraform in some way, shape, or form. Oh yes, looks like the AI landing zone.
Okay.
A link just got popped in the chat.
Yeah, I Googled that and I found that one and I was thinking that was it. But I wanted to be sure. So I will take that one and move forward with that to start with. This is not a promotion of any other competitor, but Micah, you might be interested in the link that I sent you.
That's too funny. I won't read the link, but that is funny.
I have my Raspberry Pi. I have all the flow sensors. I have the temperature sensors. I have a camera to do facial recognition so that the keg only unlocks when the face is recognized, but I haven't put it all together yet. So it's pretty cool.
Mark Tinderholt, the Azure Terraformer himself, had a cool thing with the Minecraft Terraform provider that he built, where he applies and it creates a bunch of sheep. But then I watched him destroy, and all the sheep died, and that was quite a sad sight. It was just mass genocide of those poor little sheep. Any other topics? Going once. Going twice. Alrighty. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. This was a great time. We'll see you all in November, the week before Thanksgiving, I think. And yeah, just have a great October. Enjoy the fall leaves wherever you're at. Or if you're in somewhere where it's warm all the time, I'm envious of you. So see you next month.
Thank you. See you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Steven.
Thank you.